I've been involved in architectural technology for 35 years now, and worldwide I've made contacts abroad in many countries for 20 years. And just now I can see a tendency of architectural technology splitting into different fractions, not particularly in Denmark now, but in the future. And one important thing we're looking in Denmark, that the link to the industry, the link to craftsmanship, and I'll show this when I go through the history of architecture technology, is very important. And it's important to keep this link and create critical thinkers, problem solvers, project managers, people who understand the full industry, architectural technologists. And the tendency is that that architecture and technology is going very computerized, which it has to do and must do. But in some cases, it's losing the thinker, the person who can solve the problems and solve the technical problems in the industry. So really, I'd like to talk a bit about the course now as it is. I'll do this. And then I'll come into, how it is at this moment, and then what is the future for architectural technology, if you have time. And I'm happy to think my colleague here will take some of my presentation because it's a bit long, so I'll skip some slides yet, if that's okay. So first of all, in Denmark we have 7 semesters, and each semester is a topic. So that will say first semester, 1-story house, second semester, 2-story house, 4th semester, high-rise building, 5th semester, renovation. And the students work in groups of 4 for 20 weeks on these long projects. Okay. And in these projects, the students have to consider not only architectural technology, they have to look at the management, the costing of the project. They have to look at the structural design, they have to look at the building services. Now, architectural technologists are not engineers, and they shouldn't pretend to be. And they're not architects, but we use architecture as the vehicle which we put the different disciplines in for the students to solve the problems. So to keep this is quite difficult in the changing technology. We just heard about a wonderful BIM program, and Plymouth University, the projects, but they're combining architecture. And so to keep this is quite difficult. And to give the technical problem, the technical solutions, the technical education, but also the soft qualities is very important, because communication is important for an architectural technologist. So we have the system that the students work in these groups on a building on this semesterized course. And the most important for a Danish architectural technology is the problem solving, where the building has to be put together. Okay? It has to be put together, and it has to be correct before it goes out in tender. And so therefore I believe that construction management is an important part of architectural technology. How can you build a building if you don't know the process on a building site? So we're trying to keep these foundations, even though we're going into BIM, we're doing all the different programs and that, but we've got to keep a link to the industry, to the building sector, to the craftsman, which has always been a Danish trait throughout history. So we could say that Danish architectural technology started 170 years ago. And it started when the Master Builders Guild, they said, look, we want craftsmen who can read drawings and they can draft. And so from that was the first stage really of having a professional who could understand technical drawings, right? So it started very simply. And then As we go through, technical schools were made. As you can see how it used to be, you have to white code on. You learn projection drawing. You know, the very simple start. And as we go further, when you made a detail then, you know, there was more technical education put into the project all the time, but you had to draw. You had to draw a project. You know, you had to understand the technology of a roof, the technology of the wall, and the heat loss. You had to understand all these problems. And so as it continued, there was made 5 schools in Denmark for architectural technologists, just 5 schools you could go to and become an architectural technologist, right? So it was at that time very special, but it was still not an approved education in the way of an architect or an engineer. So I think Yeda will go into this. When we first got our own CIAT, things started happening, which is KF, and Yeda will talk about that. So it took some years for us to become on the same par with architects and engineers. And after that, then things just went forward. We used to see in newspapers, draftsmen or architectural technologists wanted. Now you see architects, architectural technologists wanted. So the level has been lifted incredibly because of what everyone's put into it, plus the constructor training, which is like the CIAT. And the idea is that we must keep these qualities, that we understand materials and we understand what happens on the building side, how craftsmen work. But also we got to enhance the new technology, which we are doing. But when I've travelled through the world, I can see that there's a lot of what we call little architects being made, where they forget the technical side of a project. You know, because there's enough architects, brilliant architects. Why not be a big architectural technologist? And that's the problem fighting with these demands now. And then I'll go through this pretty quickly. So eventually, everything was in modules, or it was in modules in the start. Then it was put into multidisciplinary projects, right? And the soft qualities were important, communication skills, you know, how to communicate with architects, how to communicate with clients, how to work with other people. And then through history, you can see the slide ruler went out, then the pocket calculator came in, and then our students would, and still do, but not in the same way, they would sketch their way out of a problem. If you see like a balcony to a 2-story building, you know, you don't just look at, that's a balcony, you look at how's it assembled, what will it cost, you know, how is it made? And we want to keep that tradition going with our people. And the same as a simple roof detail was at an exam, which is part of my job, to do exams abroad for our architectural technologists. And ask a student, well, what is a cold roof? What is a warm roof? What is an inverted roof? And what material can you have in an inverted roof? And they looked at me as if they'd never heard the word. And that's the problem, really, that technology or science is being sacrificed for other things which is necessary in the industry. So we tried to keep our students to analyse and solve these problems as much as we can. And then AutoCAD came in, we all had to do AutoCAD drawings, you know, and you know, and that was the new age, because we had to teach in a different way, because our students had to show the process of what they thought about when making detailed sections. But when CAD 2 came out, they just erased everything. So there's no documentation of what was left. They struggled with line thicknesses, it was all new. I remember my structural engineer teacher coming in with a Spectrum computer. Does anyone ever remember? And he said, this will be the future. I went, you must be crazy. A little computer with a tape, you know, music, cassette, you know. But he was right, really. And then we became more professional in the sense that we included elective subjects and dissertations, right, where students now specialise in architectural technology, construction management, sustainability. So as they go through the education, they become more and more involved in their speciality. But the first 4 years, they learn what everybody else learns, which is the basics of solving problems. And then we split it into 3 phases where the first was to learn, you know, learning all the programs. The next was being professional. And then the new law which came out, which is absorption into the industry again. So in fact, students can do their final bachelor degree project in a company now and not come back to the school. So in fact, they're absorbed from practical placement, so they're away for a year, and they actually learn a lot from being in the industry and usually employed afterwards. I think Steve, what's the guy in Liverpool? He was employed, wasn't he? We had a student in Liverpool who was employed there afterwards. And then Yeda will talk about this. And then the changing employment field for architectural technology is quite interesting. Yeda will go into that, I think. But it's changed from pure architect offices and contracting companies to other things, you know. I didn't have time to translate this, sorry. And so if I look at what an architectural technologist can do with say, the background of their education, he or she can fit in to many different roles, even from the traditional architect roles of briefing. You know, the brief was usually the architect, the client. With the emergence of sustainability, energy management, so you find our students can be involved in many things through the different phases. But the main thing is always in Denmark has been what we call the scheme design, the part of the project where all technical details must be solved before it's delivered to the client with the costing. So that's very important, and we still keep that. But now with the event of with all the different programs they have, they're being employed in a multitude of different places. And then because we do management, we also have students running building sites, running the projects, looking at the economy, because we do not have a quantity surveyor in Denmark. That is done by architectural technologists or by an experienced engineer normally. So that's involved in the education as well, costing. And then, so in fact, this is great because there's so much employment possibilities. But what is it doing to the education? It's dividing it up to architect-minded, BIM managers, and really splitting the education up. And I'm afraid in the future that there'll be a BIM degree. Everyone will split up, and I don't know where architectural technology will stand in the system. But maybe you could give me some answers to that. And so at the school now, as some of you know, BIM is very important, and it fits very well into our projects, you know, where the students look at the engineering, the building services, they have the programs to do it, they use MS Project, SketchUp, they use Rivet, Sigma to price calculation. So everything's being put in, but I just hope that everything will remain, that they are still problem solvers. And this is sort of what we're running at the school now. And luckily enough, we can introduce it semester by semester in the 7 semesters we have. So gradually the students become comfortable with BIM. And then after 170 years, keeping the education close to craftsman's education to the craft, can we keep that going? Yes, yeah, and that is the question really. In Australia and New Zealand, it's disaster because the universities opened up for architectural technologists to go to universities now and receive an architect bachelor degree. So many architectural technology educations are having to close down because of lack of students. So there's a lot of problems. Some schools are fantastic where their students work with Photoshop, they do presentation, virtual reality, and they get fantastic jobs, but that's all they do. That's all they do is this part. You know, they're not flexible to take other parts or jobs. And yeah, so I asked myself what, you know, when I talked to Melbourne, they said, oh, we're just educating CAD monkeys now. I said, what do you mean? He says, yeah, the students sit at the computer, you know, and they put in information. I've got a student in Poland who's a manager, a BIM manager, and he rang and said, you know, it's great, but I just put information in, but I don't solve anything, you know. So the question is, what will the future be for architectural technology? Because it's going very fast. It's incredible. And then, you know, we all know this guy, don't we? So if you do what you always did, you'll get what you always got. And that's something we haven't done and you haven't done. You're changing all the time. But we get what we put into our students, and it's worth remembering. I'd like to have been a bit longer and told a bit more about it, but thank you for listening. Yeah. Bye.